benefits of the plan, or you can set that up where all the employees basically get an equal share of that retirement plan. And, you know, just from my own experience, that's the easiest way for me to sort of filter out which doctor I want to use, because I certainly don't want to use a doctor that takes all the money for themselves, because I know I'm not going to get the same kind of care. If he doesn't care for his employees, he's not going to care for me. I'm just a number. I'm just a means to a piece of revenue. And so, you know, but it all kind of comes back to client service, and there's certain ways you can figure those things out. But, you know, in terms of individually, you know, some of you guys may be saying, well, I do that. I talk to this client. I do, you know, I do the right things. I do that. Well, do you do the same things to your fellow workers? I mean, because it's so easy to sit there and be willing to help a client because you say, well, Jay might be seeing, he might be watching, and if I'm not doing the right thing. But do you do the same thing with your fellow employees? Because the idea, and the only way an organization is ever going to be successful, is if there's a team effort involved. And what I would suggest, or what I would advise, is if you guys can take that same temperament that you're supposed to have with the customers and have that to each other, then that's great. And that's what needs to happen. You know, and the other thing that I would also talk about in relation that I see a lot on the lower level things is that you see people that say, that's not my job. You know, oh, that's not my job. Well, you know what? You know what I find out about jobs? And everybody says, I want a promotion, I want this, I want to climb the ladder, I want to do this. Well, the one thing I get to do is I get a bird's eye view of probably 250 triad corporations, and I see the way that they operate. And one of the things that I see that they operate is that every employee wants a raise, every employee wants a promotion, and what happens typically, or 99% of the time, is that raise and that promotion don't come at the moment that that employee deserves that raise or promotion. And this is, I'm saying that from an independent person. I'm saying that from the accountant that's looking at the situation. What typically happens in those situations is that employee has already, what happens is that employee is already doing the job of the promoted step, and that's when it gets recognized. And so what I'm trying to tell you guys is that the only way to get ahead is to do things above and beyond what you're already being asked to do. I mean, if you sit there and you say, hey, this is my job, this is it, this is my description, it's in this box right here, you're never going to get out of that box. But if you sit there and you say to yourself, you know what, you know, Kevin's struggling, he needs some help. Usually I get done with my core chore activities, I'll have an extra 30 minutes. Well, the first day you do that, no one's going to notice. But after, you know, a certain length of time, everybody's going to notice, and you're going to become dependable, and you're going to expand on what that job description is. And usually it's at that point that people realize, wow, this person has raised the bar, this person has set the standard for what we expect, and this person, by their actions, is helping others notice what needs to be done, how to do it, how to get better. And what you're going to have is you're going to have better communication, better working relationships between all employees. And so the thing that I always tell folks is, you know, don't be a problem identifier, be a solution maker, because anybody in this room can talk about what's wrong with this organization. But it takes a real person to try to figure out ways to improve on that organization. I mean, we can all point the finger at, we don't do that right. And, you know, that's the easy step. The harder step is to find a way to think outside the box, to help come up with solutions. And sometimes it can be not even within your skill set. I mean, you can see it, you can identify it. Well, who's going to be the hero? Not the person that identifies it, but the person that solves the problem. And so that's a challenge that I put out to all of you guys. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of what this 212 is all about. It's that extra degree, it's that extra effort. And so, you know, it's a challenge. And the way that you make that happen is, I always tell people, you kind of have to start from the inside. You know, it's easy to point the finger, but what do they say? When you point the finger here, you got 3 pointing back at you, or something to that effect. Well, typically, you know, when you want to advance, look inside of yourself, because if you can improve on yourself, then all the other things are going to naturally fall into place. And what I mean by that is, you know, are we just punching the clock when we get here? And if we are getting here 5 minutes late, are we leaving 5 minutes early? You know, how does that work? You know, what I see, we recruit a lot of young folks from colleges, and they're straight out of college. And, you know, I hate to admit this, but I'm really in that stage of life where I'm finally starting to notice that kids and young adults are much more technically savvy than I am. I've never thought that day would come. I thought I had that on my parents, but now it's coming full circle of life. But what I do see from those kids that come into our practice, you know, as young interns and new employees, is you get about 50% that really want to come in and grind it out and work as hard as they can. And then you get another 50% that want to sit there and they want to text all day and they're playing with their smartphone. The problem is they're not getting any smarter at their job. You know, and I know we all got to take text. We all have spouses. Well, we don't all have spouses, but you know, many of us have significant others, and we've got kids involved, and you know, you do have to take some time out of your day. But the problem is where is your commitment? What are you committed to? Are you committed to be here physically, but you're not committed to being here mentally? And that's what you see with these folks that are taking these smartphones and spending all day. So the thing another challenge that I make to you guys is that what you do is you don't bring your work, you don't bring your home life to work. I mean, granted, you're going to have a case-by-case basis, and certain days just aren't going to go into place the way you want them to. But you know, the challenge is really to sit there and say, okay, I'm not bringing my work with me, but I'm going to take it home with me. And what I mean by that, when we take work home, I'm not saying, well, Jay he really made me mad today, and I'm going to vent about this for 2 hours. That's not what I mean by take work home. What I mean by take work home is spend 30 minutes, whether it's in the car, on the way to work, on the way home from work, wherever, and think about your job. And give yourself a grade and say, what did I do? How did I do today? Was I worthy of an A? Did I get 100? Were there too many distractions? Was today a C? Now, some of you guys may do that, but the only way you're going to get better at your job is to, one, ask for constructive criticism, and that may be through Jay or through somebody else. And the other thing is to take your own self-evaluation and say, you know, did I give it 110%? Did I give it 212% today? Because I think if you're going to ask yourself that, that's the first step on, okay, no, I didn't. You know, I'm honest with myself, I didn't. So what did I do wrong? And how can I keep that from happening the next day? And those are all things that really just kind of make you aware of where you are. Now, I'm not saying do that every day, but on some days, why don't you think outside the box a little bit and ask yourself, hey, what can I do to make my job more efficient? You know, what can I do? Are there any processes that I don't like the way we do things? Is there anything that I can do that can make these things more efficient? Because the more efficient I get and the faster I can do my job, the more I can help other people. And when you start helping other people with what they do, they're going to appreciate your help. And at the same time, the organization's going to run a whole lot better. And you know, the end result is the client, is the customer. And the other thing that I would challenge you to do as you're thinking about this stuff outside of your core duties is to say, what would the client think right now? What would the customer think? If I were the customer and this happened to me, how would I feel? Because the faster that each one of you can identify a customer need or a potential customer need, the faster you're going to be able to react to that when they do make that request that you think they're going to make. You know, because, you know, Jay was up here, and when Jay was up here, he sounded more like an accountant than I did. I mean, he's out here throwing 12% around, 7%. I kind of got a little nervous, to tell you the truth. And I said, he's doing my job for me. You know, but I think what he's telling you and what you guys have probably seen in the last 3 or 4 of these years is that the economy hadn't been real good. And when the economy's not real good, what happens? there's less customers out there, right? And because there's less customers out there, what does that mean? Margins go down. How do margins go down? Because everybody's fighting for that same smaller piece of business, right? So at the end of the day, what does that mean? What does it boil down to? Well, it's going to be two things. It's going to be price, and price isn't something that anybody in this room can set, really, probably except for Jay, and service. And service is what sets you apart, what has kept you guys afloat, you know, while the economy's been bad. You know, it's great to hear we got a 12% increase, we got a 7% increase, all that kind of stuff. But what that tells me is you guys have survived what hopefully is the most critical period in the economic recovery. And the only way you guys were able to do that is to have a foundation of teamwork and to have a foundation of helping each other and really being concerned and putting client service, customer service as number one. Because, you know, otherwise you guys wouldn't be here. I mean, Jay and I would be filing bankruptcy papers, and, you know, Scott and I, we wouldn't be having any parties. You know, so on that regard, you should pat yourself on the back, but at the same time, let's keep moving forward. You know, let's find ways to keep moving forward. Let's challenge ourselves to think the way that the client thinks. You know, because if you look at it, and you guys will stay in hotels too, and I'm sure when you guys do, you're probably the hardest people in the world to satisfy. You probably know all the tricks and trades, where to look in the room for stuff, and no, I'm not using that. You know, rip that comforter off, we're not touching that, or whatever the case may be. You know, so I probably need you guys to come and check my next room out before I do that. But that's a whole different story. But you know, you got a great foundation, and so really it's about improving the team, and then individually about improving yourself. And I think everybody here can do that if they just want to do it. And you know, instead of just talking metaphorically about what we can do, you know, there's the big rock, small rock theory. And how many of you guys have a list of stuff that you're supposed to do every day, and then maybe you've got some things that you're supposed to do once a week or once a month or something like that? Like, oh, I remember I worked at a restaurant one time, and you did all your day-to-day stuff. And then there was that day once a month or every couple of weeks, I can't remember where, it was time to clean out the fryer. And nobody wanted to clean out the fryer. And, you know, so that was one of those things that, well, it was Monday, and my boss said to clean out the fryer. Well, then it was Tuesday, and you know, we were real busy today, boss. We didn't get to the fryer, so we're going to do that. You know, Friday rolled around, and it was, you're not leaving Friday until that fryer's clean. So I think we've all got some stuff that we kind of blow off because we don't want to do it. And from all the organizational gurus that I've ever talked to or heard speak, every single one of them has said, what you want to do is tackle the big rock first. Now, I know there's certain things that you have to do, and if that big rock doesn't involve customer service, well, the customer service in your industry should always be the big rock. But, you know, what you guys need to really focus on is making sure that that big rock gets done, because if I don't do that big rock, and the afternoon rolls around, that big rock's still on my shoulders. But I'll tell you what, if I do that big rock first, and all I got a bunch of little small rocks behind that rock, it just makes the rest of the day go by a lot faster. So one of the things I want to challenge you guys to do, you're going to have to do it anyway. So instead of just pushing those things back, do the hard stuff first if you can. It makes all the difference in the world. I see, I'm telling you common sense stuff. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But I'm telling you things that you're sitting there going, yeah, you're good. And so, you know, it's one of those things that you just have to be vested in your job. Because what I tell the young people that come into our office is, okay, you got a job and you got a career. And you can choose for this job to be a job, or you can choose for this job to be a career. Now, obviously, Jay mentioned, I think it's Bernice in the back, well, she's chosen this to be a career, obviously, if she's been here for 34 of these things. And some of you guys may be on the fence with regard to, by choice or not, she's made that a career. But, you know, the job is only going to stay the job. It is a career when you vest in that job, and you're willing to stay late, you're willing to come in early, you're willing to say, hey, Kevin's sick. Don't worry, I got this, guys. I know it's my day off, but I'm coming in, I'll help out. I mean, that's a career. And I know you can't do it all the time, but that's the difference between a job and a career. And you guys have to make that decision whether or not individually you want this to be your job or whether or not you want this to be your career. And when you start making a decision to make this be your career, then you're going to start doing some of those things like thinking outside the box and finding new ways to help the organization, because you're going to take pride in the organization instead of just saying, is it Thursday yet? Because I really need that paycheck. I mean, yeah, you'll still say that, but that may not be quite as big a piece on your mind. And in closing, you know, we always talk about thinking outside the box. And surely a successful organization always wants to think outside the box or have people that do that. I mean, because if you're just doing the same thing all the time, you don't really know why you're doing it. I think somebody labeled that at one point the definition of insanity. But to get better and to adjust with the times, one of the things that you always have to do is think out of the box, think of new ways to do things. And being in the hotel industry, you guys may have already heard the story, but it was new to me when I heard it. We had a Walt Disney executive come and talk to us, and you know, everybody, I don't know if everybody's been to Walt Disney or not, but everybody certainly is aware of Walt Disney. And you know, they talked about customer service. That's, you know, that's their game. Their game is to bring people down there, give them the experience of a lifetime, and with the expectation that that family is going to come back within 3 to 5 years. And so what they've done is they basically have set up a bonus program so that if you're the one that has the idea of the week or the year or the month or whatever, then what they do is they financially reward those people for coming up with ideas. Well, I'm going back full circle to the housekeeper story, and they had a housekeeper there, and she just loved the kids. She loved seeing their faces. She just loved the joy that Walt Disney was able to bring them. And she said, you know, I'm a housekeeper. I'm not really the person that's in charge of giving them the cotton candy or the waitress that gets to see them have the meal with all the characters, all that stuff. So she said, I wonder if there's anything that I can do that will help increase the experience for these kids. And I don't know if she knew origami or what, but she is the lady that turned the towels into creatures. And she was the one that folded up, all the towels in the rooms so that when you left for the day, it was a normal looking towel. And when you came back for that day, that towel turned into Mickey Mouse, it turned into a duck, it turned into all kinds of animals, everything else. Well, Walt Disney had no idea this was going on. And in true Disney sort of self-evaluation like we talked about, what Disney decided to do was they were sending out these comment cards, tell us about your stay. And they got a system where they could almost tell with 90% surety whether or not you were going to come back within that 3 to 5 year period. Well, on those comment cards, all these people started saying, we love the towels in the room. You know, what an amazing touch that was. Now, I'm not telling you guys to start folding towels up in the shape of horses or anything else, because your clientele's a little different. They might think that's a little strange. But they started getting all these comments, and they didn't know where it was coming from. And they finally traced it back to that one housekeeper. And that housekeeper got promoted, and she became in charge of teaching all the new hires how to fold those towels. And so it's just a perfect example of how somebody was in a position and they thought outside of the box and they made the most of it, and it enhanced the client experience to make it an unforgettable experience. And I don't think I could leave you with anything better than that story, and hopefully you guys can find a way to adapt that into your current jobs and just help you enhance that customer satisfaction with every time that they're here. So as Jay says, that they'll smile not only on check-in, but they'll smile on check-out. So that's all I've got. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.